Welcome to our post. Today, we will see stories of r/ProRevenge. Deliberately deplete my prepaid phone balance. You will pay for it 1,000 times over. I went to middle school in the early 2010s, right before smartphones really took off. I got my first phone right before starting 6th grade. It was a slide phone with a pay-as-you-go plan that cost 10 cents per minute for calls and per text message sent or received. Worse yet, sending or receiving photos cost 25 cents each. It was very expensive, and my parents only gave me $100 a year for this. If I exceeded the amount, I had to cover the rest with my limited birthday and Christmas money I had. Fortunately, most of my friends were good about helping me preserve the balance. They would call, and I'd let the call drop, but immediately call back on a landline so it wouldn't count as a call, and they'd email me or message me on Skype for most things. Everything was good until Derek joined the group in 7th grade. At first we thought he was funny, but we quickly got fed up with him as he was very unpleasant and exhibited many antisocial behaviors. He started drama within the friend group and also caused issues between us and other kids outside of the group. He was manipulative and always played the victim when others rightfully called him out on his crap. And he knew how to charm parents, so getting rid of him was easier said than done. He was the one friend who didn't respect my phone situation. He very frequently texted me dumb memes, even though I told him multiple times to just email or Skype them to me instead, since picture text messages cost 25 cents each. Unfortunately, blocking phone numbers was a feature that was unavailable for this pay-as-you-go plan, so there was nothing I could do as he spammed my phone. One day he got mad at me for some reason and spammed my phone with memes. He must have sent me over 100 lolcats over text. He kept sending them until I lost service since my phone balance was depleted. I had lost the $40 remaining in my account as a result. I was extremely pissed and demanded that he pay me the $40 he had cost me, and he refused and said it wasn't his problem. I got home from school really upset and told my dad about the situation, expecting him to go and tear Derek's mother a new one and demand the money, but my dad said that it wasn't worth the battle. I even asked him about a small claims court, but he said that not all battles are worth fighting and that the effort wasn't worth $40. He took me to the carrier's store and loaded $50 onto the phone. The carrier changed my phone number, and they managed to block Derek's number. They had initially said that blocking phone numbers wasn't possible with this plan, but my dad insisted and would not leave the store until they did it. I was extremely paranoid about my phone number being leaked and other kids spamming it to F with me. Fortunately, my parents got iPhones that summer and got me one too, and the new family plan had an unlimited text plan. Nonetheless, I was pissed at the $40 he essentially stole from me out of malice. Fortunately, not too long after, there was a big blowout between Derek and the rest of the friend group at the end of the school year, and we permanently kicked him out of the group. He was an outcast the following year in 8th grade. Nobody was tolerating his crap anymore, and he changed schools the year after, and we never heard from him again. Fast forward to a few years ago, I was back home for a few months between graduating college and starting a new job on the other side of the country. I went out to some garage sales one Saturday morning, and I ended up at Derek's house. I recognized his mother, but I don't think she recognized me. I guess glasses and a beard is all you need. I noticed some Pokemon napkins out for sale, and when I picked them up to look at them, Derek's mom said that her son had been obsessed with Pokemon for his whole life, and that she was tired of Pokemon stuff occupying her home for so many years. I said that these napkins were for my younger cousin who is really into Pokemon, and asked if she had any more Pokemon stuff. She said she didn't know people were still into that, and that there were a few boxes in the attic with her son's old stuff. She actually took me inside the house, which I never imagined I'd set foot inside ever again, and let me climb up the attic ladder and take down several large boxes to look through. The first one had Christmas ornaments in it and other junk. But I freaked out inside when she opened a box jam-packed with Pokemon video games in the original boxes, though I kept my cool on the outside. The whole reason I had agreed to go inside in the first place was because I was holding out hope of this exact scenario happening. See, I knew Derek was obsessed with Pokemon. Our friend group liked Pokemon back in the day, even when other kids thought it wasn't cool. But Derek was on a whole different level. He bragged about his Pokemon collection all the time. At the time he had every single main series game in the original box, and in mint condition, as he always had to add in. I went to his house once, and he was showing me his collection. He yelled at me for touching one of the games. Nobody was allowed to touch them except him. He had many older Nintendo games in excellent condition, but Pokemon was his favorite. He had had a couple of incidents with his mom damaging or throwing away his things. It wasn't out of malice but just ignorance, as she didn't think the games or collectibles had any value. Fast forward into the present day, I was thinking about this when I asked his mother if she had any other Pokemon stuff. She ended up bringing out the motherlode. We opened all of the boxes she had me bring down. Within the boxes there was the beloved collection of Pokemon games, all very well preserved, as well as several Nintendo consoles, hundreds of games, 24 binders full of Pokemon cards, and there was also a box of many Lego sets with the original boxes and everything, with many old Star Wars sets. When I saw Jango Fett, I knew I struck gold. I told her that I liked old Legos as well, and asked her how much for the 5 boxes of games, cards, and Lego sets. And she thought for a second and said $100 a box, or $400 for all 5. I told her I would take it all and hauled butt to get to an ATM. I loaded the 5 boxes into my dad's truck and immediately drove home. I knew there was potentially tens of thousands of dollars of goods here. This was the score of a lifetime, and I finally felt vindicated for the $40 Derek had taken from me all those years ago. I ended up giving all the stuff to my uncle, who's a hobbyist eBay reseller. He offered to sell it all. He was willing to go through the effort and sell everything individually, and despite my insistence, he said he wouldn't take more than a 10% cut of the profits after all fees and taxes. We went through and logged every single item along with the estimated value, and the total of the whole lot was about $40,000. 40,000 was a poetic number since this was 1,000x the value of what Derek stole from me all those years ago. My uncle sold most of the lot before the end of the summer and ended up writing me a check. Though it was considerably less than $40,000, it was still a life-changing amount of money for me. I was able to pay off my remaining student loans and put the rest towards a down payment on a new car. Next story. A lawyer's pro-revenge on a landlord. Landlords are buttholes, generally speaking. Everyone knows that. But if you think residential landlords are bad, they're nothing compared to commercial landlords. Landlords of commercial buildings are some of the cruelest, nastiest people I've ever come across. This revenge tale is about a commercial landlord and how I dealt with him. Back in the 90s, sometimes I'd go for lunch at this restaurant in the basement of our building. The place was called The Vault because it had a massive bank vault that had always been there, dating back to the days before the place was turned into a restaurant. The vault was so huge that they could seat a couple of tables in there, and you could eat dinner surrounded by rows of old, gleaming safe deposit boxes. One day I was there for lunch, and the owner took me aside. "The landlord's driving me nuts," he said. The landlord drives everyone nuts. I was a subtenant in the same building, sharing space with an older lawyer, Aaron, and the landlord was always causing us trouble. I'd already had a few run-ins with him, and we hated each other on sight. In most jurisdictions, commercial landlords don't need court orders to get you out if you're late with the rent. Instead, they just change the locks, and you find out about it when you show up and your key doesn't work. Every time our landlord had a dispute with anyone, which was often, he'd always threaten to change the locks. He keeps demanding all this stuff for extra rent, and it's really weird because a lot of it's really old. The restaurant owner showed me a letter the landlord had served on him earlier that day. I looked over the demand and read a list of expenses for snow removal and parking lot repair and common area flooring and all kinds of crap going back years. I read it all the way to the end, And there it was, the usual clause saying he was going to change the locks if the tenant didn't pay this and do that. From the wording of the demand, it looks like you've been fighting a while. Why did you wait before consulting a lawyer? I asked one of the lawyers I know, and he said it's hopeless. He told me the lawyer's name. It was a guy I knew with a crappy real estate practice who'd resorted to taking little legal aid cases to keep the lights on when the market tanked in '89. You do something to make the landlord hate you? I asked. Because this is a bit over the top, even for our butthole landlord. He knows I'm moving the restaurant. I think he's trying to grab as much money as possible before I go. Plus, he's giving me grief over the vault. He won't let you take it with you. Are you kidding? It weighs almost 100 tons, and I don't need it. But the lease says I have to remove it, and that I also have to restore the building to what it was before there was a vault. That would cost a fortune. The butthole landlord says if I leave the vault behind when I move, he'll sue. Send your lease up to my office and let me look it over, I said. I finished my lunch, and when I got back to my office, the lease was waiting for me. It was just as bad as the restaurant owner said. The lease was a renewal of an assignment of a renewal. The original documents dating back to the shortly after WWM2 when a bank first leased the place and the vault was installed. Somehow the landlord had suckered the restaurant into taking over a lease that left him liable to remove a bank vault at the end of term. No big deal, I thought. The restaurant can default, and all the landlord can do is sue a shell company. But when I got to the last page of the lease, there was a guarantee clause. The restaurant owner had personally guaranteed the lease, and he was on the hook for removing a vault weighing 100 tons and then fixing the place up. It would cost a fortune. The case was hopeless, of course. That was obvious right away. But then I thought about the butthole landlord with his demands and his threats and his rent hikes, and I asked my brain to do me a solid, which it promptly did. I picked up the phone and called the restaurant owner. I'm effed, right? You're calling me to say there's no way out. That's what my commercial lawyer already said, but I just thought I'd ask. I can save you, but it's gonna cost. How much? $5,000 in legals and another G note for the agent. Agent? What kind of agent? Real estate? Send up a check, certified, and leave the rest to me. The check hit my desk in less than an hour. I went to Aaron's office. I need a real estate agent, I said. You buying a house? Nope. Selling a house? Nope. By this point, I'd been sharing space with Aaron for almost 5 years, and he knew me pretty well. You pulling one of your stunts again? He asked. Yup, but nothing that will get you into trouble. I know a guy. Aaron knew all kinds of guys, and that's one of the reasons he eventually got disbarred. But he knew a guy, and he gave me the agent's name and number, and the next day I paid the agent a visit. I told him what I needed, and we agreed to terms. I gave him some papers and the cash for his fee. A few days later, I was again at the vault for lunch. The owner saw me walk in and greeted me himself. The landlord's here, he said. Why? For lunch, and to be in butthole. Let's sit in the vault room so I don't have to look at his face. He took me to the vault room, and with the door almost completely closed, we had a consultation while we ate pasta and drank red wine. We're making demand on the landlord, I said, munching on spaghetti carbonara. Demand? What are we demanding? I pulled a document out of my briefcase and passed it to him while I sipped my wine. We're demanding that the butthole landlord release all the restaurant equipment, all the fixtures, the ovens, the freezers, the ventilation, everything you need to run a restaurant. The lease exempts all that stuff. He can't stop me taking what I want. The only thing that matters is the vault, and of course I don't want that. I shook my head. You need the vault, I said, and we're demanding that he release the bank vault as well. We're insisting that he let you take it out within 7 business days. You think you can beat the landlord with reverse psychology? You think if you treat him like a 2-year-old, You can manipulate him into doing what you want. We'll find out soon enough. He's had the demand for a couple of days now." The restaurant owner dropped his wine glass and it shattered on the marble floor. "You already gave it to him?" the restaurant owner said. He got up, swung open the vault door and called for the waiter to clean up the mess. "Let's see what the landlord has to say," I told him, and we walked over to the landlord's table. The landlord was a big, beefy man with a big appetite. He sat alone, eating a rack of lamb wolfishly with his hands. "My client needs an answer today," I said. The landlord looked up at me as he chewed noisily. "I'm the vault's lawyer," I said. "I gave you a demand the other day. My client needs an answer right now. He needs the vault for a new place, and he's got to make arrangements." "Your client can forget about the bank vault," he said, wiping his massive greasy hands on an already soiled napkin. "But you can't do that," I said. My shock was feigned, but the restaurant owner's jaw dropped for real. The landlord laughed at us. "I'm the landlord. I can do what I want." "I'm gonna need that in writing, because my client might sue," I said. "Sue all you like," the landlord told me. "Sue till you're blue in the face." He told me that I'd have a formal response by day's end, and then he told me to go away and let him finish his lunch. When the letter arrived from the landlord, claiming ownership over the bank vault, I brought it downstairs and showed it to my client. "How the hell did you do that?" "Trade secret," I said. The following month, the restaurant moved out and the place was empty, and that was too bad, because I had always liked eating at the vault. Now the restaurant was in a new location 20 minutes away. They called the new place the Vault, and they'd preserved the vibe of the old place. It was very similar, except they didn't have the bank vault. The bank vault, all 100 tons of it, was where it had always been, in the basement of the building where I rented space. I showed up for work a little after that, and Aaron collared me. "The landlord's looking for you," he said. "Oh yeah? What about?" "He's really angry. He said his deal fell through." "Deal?" "He was supposed to rent the place downstairs to a new tenant, a bank or a credit union or something like that. They were supposed to come in to sign a lease, but they didn't show up." "And what's that got to do with me?" I said to Aaron, and I said the same thing again to the landlord when he managed to track me down a couple of days later. "I know you were behind this," he said, his jowls quivering. "I know it was you. That offer from the agent, it was all crap. Just a trick to make me keep the vault, so that your client could sneak out of the place and leave that bank vault behind. I'm gonna sue. If you're looking for counsel, I think I'm going to have to declare a conflict. I'm gonna sue the restaurant and that agent, and I'm gonna sue you." He stormed off. But the landlord didn't sue. Of course he didn't. He didn't have a contract to sue on. Only a vague letter of intent that I'd drafted, enough to hook a greedy landlord who was used to having his way. The offer he'd received was non-binding, incapable of acceptance without the signing of a formal lease, which of course never got signed. When I left Aaron's place a year later, the downstairs was still unoccupied, with a sad "for rent" sign sitting in the window, starting to look faded. I hope you guys liked this video. If you did, make sure like, comment, share, and subscribe the channel. Our posts